While travelling in South Africa recently, I of course had a hired vehicle, and I figured, you know what, I'm probably not going to get the chance to drive one of these again that soon, if at all, even if I do hire another car, so why not take the opportunity to have a Brit's perspective on a South African exclusive car. At least as far as I know, this is the primary, if not only, market for the Corolla Quest. The Quest, of course, being a more sedan or saloon-based variant of the Corolla, with the boot on the back rather than a hatchback. It has a cleaner, classier, more executive, I would say quite handsome shape as far as a Corolla goes. And of course, the Corolla for Toyota has always been a best-selling model in every single market, from the UK to Japan, and doubtless plenty of others as well. It's an iconic car, from rallying to tuning on the road. There are some deceptively quick performance versions, but at its core, what makes the Toyota Corolla so good is that it's kind of the textbook definition of a car. It gets you from A to B on a low budget with a good level of kit. It's reliable, dependable. It kind of just does what it says on the tin, so it's not surprising that it would be popular. When it comes to this particular car though, the 12th generation Corolla Quest, what they did is actually quite smart, because they used the profits that they made from the 11th generation car, having covered all of the costs of the production line, which of course is a massive expense to have to cover when you're selling any car on a mass production scale, and that allowed them to sell these cars, these 12th generation cars, at a discount compared to what the outgoing models would have been for the same level of kit. So, for example, the base model is a 250,000 rand car when new, which is the equivalent to about £11,000 here in the UK, just over 11,200, and of course we're talking 2020 numbers, so that will be a little bit different to today, but still that's a rough idea. Now there are different trim levels, and the two most notable ones are the Prestige and the Exclusive. Now the one that I was driving here I believe is the Exclusive. It certainly matches the level of trim. The Prestige model is a lot cheaper than the Exclusive at 186,000 rand, which is a very good price for a car that looks probably a good £5,000 more than that, in pounds that is, not rand, and incidentally that equates to about 8,300 brand new. Then this model I was in is 307,000 rand, which is 13,800, or just under. So even then, especially compared to new car prices in the UK, that's still a very good price. So the question is, what do you actually get for the money? Well, on the Prestige model, the cheaper of the two, the 186,000 rand car, you get a 6-speaker system, multimedia, can play DVDs, has cruise control, so it still offers a lot of what you would want from just an affordable, everyday, daily driver kind of car. But then the Exclusive model adds on top of that keyless entry, which is an interesting choice in South Africa, but there you go, keyless entry and keyless start. So in other words, you don't actually need to put a key in anywhere. You get close to the car, put your hand on the handle, and as long as you've got the key in the pocket, then the car will unlock for you. Of course, you have to take the key out and press the button to lock it as you're leaving. And likewise with starting the car, you don't have to put the key in. You just sit in the car with the key in your pocket and press the start button, and then press the stop button when you want to turn it off. So a nice little addition, certainly a very modern addition for a car on this kind of budget. It has rain sensing wipers as well, auto light leveling, day running LED lights, just all of these nice little accoutrements that make the car that much classier, especially on that budget that it's using. Now the engine of choice in this one is a 1.8 litre, it's got 103 kilowatts, so about 138 horsepower or so, so it's not the most powerful thing around, but it's a decent size, the torque isn't too bad, and I would describe its performance, because of course it's not a performance car, but its performance is adequate. Again, it's a normal car, so it just needs to be as quick as it needs to be, which is precisely what it is. I never really found that the car was lacking in power. It could do pretty much whatever you needed it to do, being cruising most of the time, start-stop traffic was fine, overtaking occasionally, pretty much whatever you need it to do. Where things get interesting though is actually the transmission. See, the version that I was driving is the quote-unquote automatic, and there are two different versions. Now what I'm about to say will not apply to anybody who is interested in buying one who wants the manual. If you want to buy the 6-speed manual, which the general consensus is the better of the two when it comes to this car, then you'll be fine. Aside from that, you'll probably have a car that you'll be extremely happy with. The interior design is very nice, the exterior looks good. We'll get to the fuel economy and practicality in a second, but in terms of just what it offers, it's a good layout. The interesting one though is the Auto. Now the Auto of course is my choice. I'm lazy, I like to just drive an Auto and have an easy time, but it's actually not a conventional Auto, it is of course a CVT, a continuous variable transmission. It's essentially, imagine a pair of cones facing each other with like a drive belt running between them, and the cones can move further or closer away to each other, making the belt distance change, thereby giving you tons and tons of different gear ratios. That's like the essence of a CVT in its purest concept. So just imagine that when you're driving the car. So definitely not a conventional gearbox by any means. And it really is when it comes to that CVT alone that really my only gripe about the car happens. Now there is a second thing which I'll note about the car, but it's not so much of a gripe. You'll understand what I mean in a second. But for now, the gripe is that the CVT really doesn't feel like it was that well developed, which is surprising to me from a company like Toyota because they have plenty of money, plenty of experience, they've done CVTs before, plenty of Japanese brands have. So the fact that the CVT sometimes feels like it doesn't really know what to do is a bit odd. And in particular, it's actually when you're going downhill. So you can switch the car over with the stick into a Tiptronic manual mode where you can click it forward or back to increase or decrease ratios like you would in a sequential gearbox. But going downhill in full automatic mode, as we did plenty of times because it was very hilly, it seems to just kick it down into the equivalent of like second gear going down a hill. So the revs jump up to 4,000-5,000 for no apparent reason. The car makes an obnoxiously loud noise, and aside from braking really hard to then match those revs and lower them, it's just a weird experience. It feels like the gearbox doesn't know how to cope with hills, which again is quite odd for a South African car. Now going uphill, it's fine. Maybe a little underpowered due to the gearbox, but fine. On flat roads, it's fine, of course. It's perfect for cruising. And for start-stop traffic, any automatic is going to be easier to use than being on the clutch all the time, especially on hills. It's just going downhill that it is quite strange. Now, the fix that I would recommend having for that, the one that I commonly used was, as I said, braking to just lower the speed. But if you don't want to lower your speed that much, I would recommend clicking it over into manual mode and pushing it up a couple of clicks so that you're not dropping that many cogs. In effect, keep the gears higher. You want to be going down the hill in a higher gear so that you're not revving the nuts off of the engine as the CVT wants to itself. So that really is my only big gripe about the car, and I believe that in particular, as well as just the general consensus about CVTs that many people have of being not the biggest fan of them, is why most people prefer the manual. So if you are looking for the manual, as I said, you'll be fine. The CVT though, that is something to consider. And if you get the chance to test drive one, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. The other interesting thing to me about the car is actually the economy. See, in the time that I had the car, which was for around a week or so, we covered about 300 kilometers in the vehicle. Put about 580 Rand of fuel in it, so it was fairly efficient. Less than 2 Rand per kilometre is quite good, and Toyota themselves advertise the car as using 7 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres. And it's of course a petrol vehicle, not a diesel, but that's kind of strange to me because that equates to about 40 miles per gallon average here in the UK. Now, it is a 1.8 litre, but it's not particularly powerful, and it is a modern car from 2020 onward. So to do 40 miles per gallon average actually doesn't seem as good to me as I would have thought it would be. If you compare that, for example, to, say, a UK equivalent of what this would be from even Toyota themselves, something like a Prius, of course, with the hybrid system is going to be even better, but just in general, I would have expected more like maybe 50 to the gallon, at least 45, maybe even higher, even without a hybrid system. So it seems almost like Toyota is using slightly outdated technology on the car, and I believe that's exactly what they are doing because, as I mentioned earlier on, they are using technology and things that they'd developed for the previous car and carried it over, so there is definitely some of that there. It feels like they might have needed to tweak that a little bit more. Now, for many people, I'm sure less than 2 Rand per kilometre is fine anyway. It's certainly not overly expensive. It is economical enough for a car of its size and engine capacity and even power, you could say. So I don't think many people will complain about it. It's more of a personal thing to me where I would have expected that engineering, again from Toyota in particular, to be maybe a little bit better than that. Ultimately though, I think it's a great little car. It was cheap to run, all things considered. The engine was decent. The gearbox felt like it limited it a little bit for sure, as I mentioned. Handling wise, I personally find front wheel drive cars to be a little bit skittish, at higher speeds on the motorway, even in a straight line. They tend to react to side winds quite a lot, so that's more of a personal preference thing to me. But even when it came to my girlfriend, she really liked the car as well. She also found it very strange how loud and obnoxious it got going down hills, but aside from that, she actually mentioned even considering getting one herself because she'd never even thought about a Corolla Quest. She was more of a Volkswagen girl, as many people are in South Africa, and even I myself have had a couple of VWs. But this one actually kind of turned her around. She really likes it. She likes the size, the look, the engine, the power. And yeah, if it has the power to win over someone like me, who's not really interested in normal cars, win over someone like her, who wasn't interested in a Toyota or a Corolla, then that alone is quite a good testament to how good of an overall experience it is. The multimedia system is nice, it has a simple layout, it's clean. Everything about the car, as I said at the start of the video, just kind of gets the job done, does what it says on the tin. And I personally do like how Toyota seem to have brought a little bit more of that almost Lexus styling into this car. So it looks a little bit more executive, a little bit more classy than you would typically think of a Corolla as being. So ultimately for the price, it's a pretty damn good deal, I think, and it's no surprise that there were quite a few of them on the road. So if you are in the market for something that looks good inside and out, is comfortable, has decent enough space for a bigger driver, and good boot space, rear passenger space, good fuel economy, decent size engine, and depending on the gearbox that you choose, a better or not so good experience, then you might want to consider one of these. But ultimately that's it for my thoughts on the Corolla Quest. Maybe next time I'm over there in South Africa on another holiday, I may get the chance to review something else that's exclusive to that market, but we'll have to wait and see. And for now, that is it for my thoughts. Of course, if you drive one of these in South Africa, or if you had one in the past or drove one, drop your thoughts down below, or just your thoughts on the car in general. But until next time, I'll see you then with another review, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.